Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the fourth episode of Crunch Time with Kruck. We took about a 2-week hiatus just to get things together. One of us was in quarantine. It's your guess who it was. But since we're back, we're just going to have some fun, and we're going to get right into things. First topic on the ledger is March Madness. Everybody's favorite college basketball time of the year is March. I know personally for me when it happened, I was sitting in 7th and 8th hour in high school, not caring about the class, just watching it on my computer.
Same.
And so moving forward, the potential number one seeds, unless something drastic happens, is going to be Villanova, Kansas, UNC, and then Gonzaga, Max.
Krug, this March Madness is going to be so exciting to watch this whole year. It's going to feel different, though, right? Because obviously the protocols and everything being in one location, all in Indianapolis, around Indiana area, it's going to be different for the players, the staff, and how many people can come to the games in this way. The teams to watch out for is definitely Gonzaga. Gonzaga, to me, is the most complete team to watch for in March Madness. When you look at their star players, Corey Kispert, he averages 19.2 points a game. You got Drew Timian, he averages 18.7 points a game. And the outstanding freshman in Jalen Suggs, this kid has averaged 14.3 points a game. This team's got 3 people that score in double digits. This team is exciting and interesting to watch. But other teams that I'm looking at too, look at the teams in the Big 12 and the Big 10. You know what I mean? Both of those conferences, they have 7 and 6 teams possible that might get into the tournament this year. You look at Illinois, you look at Michigan, you look at Ohio State. And then you look at teams like Baylor and Kansas. All those teams in Kansas, they struggled beginning of the year. They had to get in a groove, and they finally got it together as their team went along. So this March Madness is going to be exciting, but the team right now I'm looking at is going to be right now Gonzaga, and then we look at it as Michigan, and then maybe we look at Illinois, and who knows, maybe another team might shock you. You never know. March Madness, the 12 seeds or anybody can shock you at any time. So,
Well, as everybody knows, the COVID-19 outbreak really hit full effect a couple weeks before March Madness was supposed to start, and it honestly was a bummer to most of the nation. The Selection Sunday will be in 2 days. That's going to be March 14th. And my personal hot take going into it, I think Wisconsin's going to make a run at it and make the Final Four.
Wisconsin, all right.
Wisconsin finished second in the Big Ten. They were a tournament runner-up, which solidified their talent and also showed that they are a pretty good team, averaging 70 points per game, 34 rebounds per game, 15 assists, and they're shooting 45% from the field and almost 40% from beyond the arc.
Wow, I'm surprised you mentioned Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's a good team to me, but I feel like there's sometimes when I watch Wisconsin, they struggle and they don't do the best with options with this way. You know what I mean? And I just feel like when I look at the teams like this way, they got to go through Iowa. The Big Ten is, believable, the strongest conference. I mentioned this earlier. You got Iowa and Michigan. Those two teams, to me, have the best shot of probably competing with Gonzaga for possibly the title of this year, because both of those teams got big man. They got Hunter Dickinson for Michigan. You got Luka Garza, which I think is the best player right now in college basketball and how he plays. So those teams definitely got a shot to possibly win it all. And obviously, like I said, I'm watching a team. Watch Winthrop this year. Winthrop, this is an interesting team. They're 12. They're 22-1. They play very well. Yes, they played easy teams. Yeah. They're an easy conference, Big South. But when you look at teams, there's always that one team that's going to make a run. Cinderella team, I think Winthrop's going to be that team this year, Kruck.
And obviously we are talking about the NCAA tournament, not the NIT, which for those who don't know stands for not in tournament. As we move forward, the Dak Prescott deal with the Cowboys. Max, you got the inside scoop on that.
Yes, Dak Prescott, finally, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, finally signed Dak Prescott to a 4-year, $160 million extension, making him the second highest paid quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes. This has been an issue for the Cowboys because everyone's wondering, well, they franchise tag him too much. What are they going to do? Dak's our star. He's the big player in Dallas and how he plays and everything. So, Kruck, I'm asking you, man, how do you feel about this deal for Dak, and how do you think the Cowboys will try to resemble themselves and help them for the future in Dallas?
Well, you know, everything that you see when it comes to signing of the contract, you got to take with a grain of salt. But the words that Dak Prescott was using are very specific and very, very good in terms of Dallas. He said, and I quote, "This is my home. I'm not leaving. I am a Cowboy." Jerry Jones reiterated, saying, "We'd love to have him back as long as he's good." Not as long as he's good, but, as long as he wants to be here.
Right.
So, in essence, he signed a $4 million deal a 4-year deal for $160 million. And Dak's stats coming into it, he's played 69 total games. He's had a record of 42-27 in those games. He had a 66% completion rating, 162 touchdowns, and 17,650 total yards. He's a 2-time Pro Bowl. He's the 2016 Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he's one of the best fantasy point grabbers since he's been in the league. Personally, I think that he's a really good fit for the Cowboys, but on the other hand, I don't think that he's the best quarterback in the league that should be earning that much money.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that. I wouldn't say Dak is probably the best quarterback in the league, and it's because you look at the other quarterbacks in the league right now. You look at Aaron Rodgers. You look at Tom Brady now, just won a Super Bowl. You look at Patrick Mahomes, and I think – yes, the Cowboys got an offense, right? They got Amari Cooper. They got great receivers. They have people that look around them this way. But when I look at Dak, he's got to make a big step for the Cowboys, not just for Dak, but for the organization. He needs to help them with his running ability, with his passing ability, and really making him as a team leader. Because, again, what does Dallas stand for? A lot of people think Dallas is America's team. Dallas is what people look at. When they see things, people understand Dallas. Now, it's not just Dallas that I'm worried about the offensive side of the ball. Their defense needs a massive upgrade, too. If the Cowboys want to compete for anything, their defense has got to step up big time. When I look at their stats last year, Kruck, they allowed 300 yards per game on the ground. That's 28th in the National Football League out of 32 teams. That is just not good. And 158 yards per rush. That's also not good. That's 31st. That's second to last in the NFL. That's a problem, and Dallas has got to fix that. So when I'm looking at Dallas going into the draft, you don't need maybe a star receiver. You don't need that kind of guy that's going to help your team out. You need a person that's going to help you big time on the defensive side, like a defensive back. Maybe look at Kevin Farley for Virginia Tech, big-time player. He can probably help you out, not just in the nickel kind of dime packages that a lot of teams like to play with, but just in the secondary and helping them as a whole on that defensive side of the ball so they can upgrade on both sides.
I mean, absolutely. As mentioned, I'm not a fan of Dak Prescott. I think that Ezekiel Elliott should have won the 2016 Rookie of the Year or Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think Ezekiel Elliott is a huge part of the offense and almost gets underplayed. I don't mean to overstep my boundary or Ezekiel Elliott's talent, but he almost has what I would like to call the Walter Payton effect. Walter Payton, back when he played with the Chicago Bears, half of the defense would constantly rotate with him. And when you watch Ezekiel Elliott play with the Cowboys, 3 to 4 players every single snap rotate solely with Ezekiel Elliott. Looking at their lineup, it goes Dak Prescott at quarterback, Ezekiel Elliott at running back. Then you have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb at wide receivers with Blake Jarwin at the tight end slot. That is a good enough backfield for Dak Prescott to work with. So I don't think he's a quarterback that he could just step into a situation and make it good like, lo and behold, Tom Brady. But I do think that he has enough people around him to make a potential push at an NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Kruck. I think Dak, like I said, his maturity as a quarterback and how he plays is going to have to be big time if the Cowboys want to compete in the NFC East and move on to winning that title. Because the NFC East, I'm also looking at the Washington football team. Sorry, Navavi, not the Redskins anymore. So that's another team. Their defense is very well with Chase Young. They obviously got to look for a quarterback, so we'll have to see about that with Washington. But those two teams, to me, are the best two fits right now for the NFC East to compete to win that title, my man.
And moving forward, Avila University is going to have their home opener after a 4-month hiatus from games. And I got the opportunity earlier this week to catch up with the offensive line coach, Keaton Stewart, for the Eagles. Coach Stewart and I talked about the upcoming game against Southwestern. Coach Stewart, how are you doing today?
Doing good, boss man. Glad to be here. Appreciate you for having me.
Thank you very much for being on the show. So, with the anticipated Southwestern game coming up on March 13th, is this going to be one of the hardest opponents that you're going to face in the latter half of the season?
I would definitely have to agree with us splitting it up for the first time, having the first part of the season, second half of the season, and then them being ranked number 21, us being ranked number 23. I definitely feel like that'll kind of be the toughest match back, right? Because it's kind of like week one, and when you're coming in week one, you really don't know what you're getting from the opponents, and they don't know what they're getting from you. So I feel like definitely just seeing as how we have this long layover, they can install new things, we can install new things. I definitely believe that this will be the toughest opponent just because there's no true film to tell what they're good, they can.
And as mentioned, COVID does take a role in things this year, splitting the season into two halves. How has the coronavirus played a role on the football team so far?
Well, firsthand, we have firsthand experience, right? Which you've been in the dog pound of the O-line. We have numerous guys out right now. But needless to say, though, the train keeps running, right? We keep going. We find a way to help the younger guys out, give them more reps than what they usually get, and at the same time, we're benefiting with the guys that still are able to practice.
As a main part of the Avila coaching staff, what would be a few players that you think teams should be on the lookout for as we come to play them?
Well, Kruck, I'm an O-line coach. So me personally, man, I think they should definitely look out for the O-line. We have a saying, rain, sleet, or snow, we want to run the ball no matter what happens. So that's definitely I would say those five guys are one group. But then, Malik Nesbitt, we have John Jacobs on offense, Christian Hopkins, Devin Arias, who's been on SportsCenter. These are all guys that they need to look out for as well. And then when you transition over to defense, we have numerous guys, new pieces as well. But we have Titino Smith, who's a freshman corner, Keytron Jones, who's also a freshman DB. So we have guys here that everybody needs to be on the lookout for, not only individually, but as a collective unit.
And postseason is always something that coaches like to keep on their minds. How do the postseason odds look right now for the Avila Eagles?
It looks pretty good. We have to win out, so I believe we hold our own fate. We have the road in our hands, so to speak. If we go out there and we win every game and handle business as we should, there's no reason why we shouldn't be in the postseason.
And it's always good to have the fate in your own hands. Thank you very much for your time, Coach.
Appreciate you, boss.
Wonderful insight from the offensive line coach, Keaton Stewart. And as both of us are on the football team, we personally feel very confident going up against Southwestern. It's not going to be a game that's going to be easily fought. We are the 23rd team. Southwestern is the 21st team. But it's anybody's game because the game always starts 0-0.
Yes, Kruck. Like I said, I'm excited for our team. With all the injuries and how we've gone through and everything, it's going to be fun for all of us. You know what I mean? It's going to be a fun game. Should be exciting. And a national ranked game, we'll see what happens. Now, Kruck, we're going to transition over. We're going to talk about the franchise tag and the updates with this way. Even though we talked about Dak Prescott getting the big news in free agency, there's obviously some other players. He ain't just the only player in the NFL. So obviously some names that were franchise tag were Chris Godwin for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears, offensive tackle Brandon Sheriff for the Washington football team. And then some players that didn't get franchise tag were like running back from Green Bay, Aaron Jones, Kenny Galladay, a wide receiver from Detroit, and then Hunter Henry, a star tight end for the LA Chargers. So, Kruck, with all these names I mentioned, and maybe some others, like, what do you think about like the franchise tag and like with people doing that? Is it good for certain players, or is it sometimes just not always great for certain teams when they need it?
Well, I mean, as always, there's give and take in both directions. Allen Robinson has expressed very publicly and almost very often that he does not want to be in Chicago, but Chicago franchise tagged him anyways because he is their best offensive threat. Being an offensive lineman myself, I like to see offensive linemen in the spotlight, so I picked out about 3 of them that could potentially be franchise tagged. For the Patriots, their offensive guard, Joe Thuney. He played 99% of the snaps while with the Patriots, and that's been for 5 years. And he's had less than 20 penalties in that span, and he has only given up an average of 2.5 sacks a year. So he's a very good offensive guard. And then the guy right next to him, the center, David Andrews, he's played 85% of the snaps. He's had to battle injury throughout a difficult career, but he's been there for 6 years. He's only gotten 18 penalties, and he's recovered 2 fumbles throughout his stint there. So even if he loses his block, if the ball is lost, he'll probably pick it up. And then the Jaguars, Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle, he just finished off his best year yet. The only problem is the Jags are hesitant to give him the franchise tag because that would be 120% of his current salary. And they want to leave as much cap space as possible for when Trevor Lawrence gets there.
Yes.
The potential number 1 pick in the NFL draft coming up.
Hmm.
But I do have to give a shout-out to the guy I went to high school with, James Robinson, the running back for the Jaguars, just set the undrafted rookie rushing record.
Yeah.
And, on the season they had 1,519 rushing yards. So as an offensive tackle that they generally ran towards, that's pretty good. You can hang your hat on that one.
Yes, and I mean, those are great names. I'm glad you mentioned all those offensive linemen, Kruck. Stay with your roots, man. Have fun with that, man. But there's one name that I'm particularly looking at that is very interesting. Aaron Jones from Green Bay. When I look at Green Bay is mostly a passing team. You got Aaron Rodgers, you got Devontae Adams making all the stats and the highlights, and Allen Lazard came up late for Green Bay, was a really good player. But Aaron Jones, they decided not to franchise tag him, and now he's open to the market of free agency. And I look at his stats last year, 1,104 yards and rushed for 9 touchdowns. And that's pretty good for being a team that's on the offensive side of the ball that needs a running game as well. And I look at their backfield, they only really have A.J. Dillon as their really only back. So now, if he wants to go up to be in the open market and help himself out with that, he's got to look at teams now that are important to him. But now Green Bay, what's your next step? You know what I mean? What is your next step to help you out? Now maybe you got to look for if there's running back in the draft. When I look at some of the running backs in the draft, you got Travis Etienne that's open this way. You got Najee Harris that's right there. Hey, even my boy from the Ohio State University, and Trey Sermon, maybe he would probably want to go there as a possible weapon. So you never know. Maybe they would want something in the draft that's important to them. You know what I mean? So we'll see what Green Bay wants to do.
And I mean, a couple other destinations that I looked at who haven't franchise tagged as of yet, the Miami Dolphins. They haven't franchise tagged anybody. The only huge free agent that I could potentially see them franchise tagging would be, of course, Fitzmagic. But he has always had an up and down year. He had a really up year last year. And if history shows anything, this next upcoming year will be a down year. And then as well, Houston Texans have pretty much been gutted over the last 3 years, losing J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, and pretty much anybody else who doesn't want to play there except for Deshaun Watson, I guess. Their best wide receiver, Will Fuller V. He has not been franchise tagged yet, but I think he should be the one that they do franchise tag. He averages a 15 yards after the catch, which is usually a pretty good stat to hold. He catches 63% of the balls thrown at him, and last year he had north of 3,100 yards as a receiver, and he's the best wide receiver they have left in the backfield for Houston. I think he should be the one that they tag.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Kruck.
And so moving forward, we have our next topic is Blake Griffin going to the Nets. Is this another super team in the works, or were they already a super team before they got Blake Griffin? Max.
It's going to be interesting with the Nets. I think the Nets, here's the thing. The Nets are an organization that wanted to rebuild inside of the Eastern Conference to compete with the Lakers and other teams that are around. When you look at it, they wanted to go for James Harden. They wanted to go for Kevin Durant. And now they get Kyrie Irving. And now adding Blake Griffin, to me, is an important part. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, his stats haven't lived up to it the past couple of years. He hasn't done what is this way. But if he can get back to the primetime Blake Griffin he was with the Clippers, and reuniting himself back with DeAndre Jordan, that's another big key too. He's also with the Nets. That's an important thing for the Nets to compete with. Now, I mean, you look at it, the East is still, they're getting better. You got the Bucks around there. You got the Sixers. But looking at it, the Nets got people all around that are going to compete with this way. And they're taking the New York market. Everyone's like, oh, what about the Knicks and whatever? And see it this way. Well, right now the Nets are taking New York, man. They are taking it, and they're doing well with it. Even though the Knicks they're doing sort of okay. They're not bad for the Knicks in this way. They're still building up on the young talent. So, like I said, at Detroit, like we said, we mentioned that he'd had his struggles. Some of the stats that I found out, Kruck, was that he averaged at Detroit before he left to go to the Nets here this season, 12.2 points per game, and he was shooting 36.5% from the field, which really is not that great in this way. I mean, because his primetime stats were double the size of that when he was back at the Clippers. So that's a big key to me. So if the Nets want to have any chance, I think all those guys got to come together as an organization. They got to come together and be as a whole, because right now the Nets are only a half game behind the Sixers, or right there, of being in the first seed of the East. So that's an important part of that, to see what will the Nets do, and maybe they might beat LeBron and the Lakers. We'll have to see.
And I mean, with Blake Griffin being acquired by the Nets now have Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, and newly added Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
Healthy KD, healthy Kevin Durant is proving all of the haters wrong by putting up a amazing season this year, even after having to be pulled from a couple games due to contact tracing. And when they first acquired their first superstar via trade this season, James Harden stepped in, and so far they've gone 18-7 as they head out of the All-Star break. But will this super team work? History says no. A few super teams that I looked up. Everybody remembers the 2019 Warriors. Their starting five included Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and DeMarcus Cousins. Coming off the bench was Andre Iguodala. 6 All-Stars. Did not get a ring. The Showtime Lakers in 1986 had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Kurt Rambis, which, for those who don't know, he's the other great wonder, right after Larry Bird, and then Michael Cooper. Did not win a ring. In 2008, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, and Kendrick Perkins did not win a ring. In 04, the Lakers had Shaq, Kobe, Gary the Glove Payton. They had Carl the Mailman Malone and Horace Grant. And if you're following the pattern, they also did not win a ring. In 2013, LeBron James, D. Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, and who can forget Chris the Birdman Anderson. They did not win a ring. In 1999, Kobe, Dennis Rodman, Shaquille O'Neal, Glenn Rice, Derek Harper, who's a 5-time NBA champion, as well as Derek Fisher, who's a 2-time all-defensive player, didn't win a ring. In 2012, Oklahoma City Thunder had Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Serge Ibaka, and Kendrick Perkins. Did not win a ring. The final team I'm going to mention is the Lob City Clippers. In 2014, they had Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford, and J.J. Redick. And if I have to say it again, they did not win a ring.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Kruck, because here's what I'm going to disagree with you about this thing in a little bit. When I look at super teams, it depends on how the team is. Yes, some teams didn't win rings and they didn't have this way, but when I look at a super team, that a team this way that comes connected, I think it's important that all players should get the reps in this way. You know what I mean? When I look at the Bulls back when Jordan and Rodman were this way, yes, Jordan won a lot of rings and he did well, and I believe that team, comparing it now, I'm comparing it to modern day. You know what I mean? Comparing it to modern day in this way. That team of Jordan in this way right now against some of the super teams could compete with some of the super teams now in this day. When you look at this way with now, we could say maybe it's a super team. I wouldn't say it's a super team with the Nets right now with Kyrie, Durant, all of them. They still got to obviously build with their super team. And obviously the Warriors when they had Clay, Steph, and all them. To me, that was another great super team with Durant in this way. So I think when you look at it, depending on what the super team is, it's important to figure out what kind of guys are there, how your team's going to be, and how everything else will help you out in the future.
And I'm going to be absolutely honest. Teams that have more than 4 superstars, in my opinion, are almost doomed to fail because there's only one basketball on the court. But when you look at it, teams with a big 3, and I use that in quotations because some teams like to consider they have a big 3, but they really don't. I'm sorry, Phoenix Suns, you do not have a big 3. You only have Devin Booker. But, as I mentioned, the big 3 what you got to look at. Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, other big threes, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. Fill in another player because they're both pretty good. These players are just so good when there's three of them, so you have two role players. One of the roles is bringing the ball off the court. The other role is grabbing the rebound and giving it back to one of the good players. Those kind of teams work. They're not the best teams when it comes to team camaraderie because other players want to shoot the ball once in a while. But when you have three really good players and two role players, that team, in my opinion, is the best set up to win an NBA championship.
Kruck, I think we can have a fun time debating this any time of day, but I think we should have time to move on to the breaking news now that happened today between Cam Newton and Tom Brady, both quarterbacks. First, we'll start off with Cam Newton. This morning, it is reported that he has signed another 1 year, looks like could be $14 million deal with the New England Patriots. Right now, this could help out with New England with their quarterback room, with Jarrett Stidham in this way. But that still doesn't mean they might look at another quarterback somewhere else. We never know it that way. They still could look for somebody out there in the market. As for Tom Brady, right now they have made a 4-year contract extension. However, this voids to a 1-year extension with Tampa through the 2022 season. That means he is only right now staying for the 2022 season, even though they did this way because of the confrontations with the cap and everything going on. So, hearing this, Kruck, both of these quarterbacks right now, I want to know, what is your view? Do you like Cam right now with Patriots right now, or what do you think? Tom Brady's extension better, or what do you think? Cam right now signing another 1-year deal with New England.
Well, I'm going to tackle Cam Newton's contract first. Personally, $14 million, that's decent for a quarterback. That's very good for anybody in this room pretty much. Max and I, we do not pull down $14 million per episode.
No.
But $6 million of those dollars are in incentives, which means at the end of the year, if he did not play a single snap, he'd walk away with $8 million. With the Patriots, he went 7-8, only having a 66% completion rate. He threw 8 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. To let everybody at home know, Dak Prescott threw more touchdowns in 5 games than Cam Newton did in 15. Not a stat Cam Newton should be proud of, but people say, he was on a new team. He had new chemistry to work with. Some people like to say, maybe he didn't have the best of talent. To those people, I tell them very plainly, Tom Brady won 2 Super Bowls with that team. Cam Newton should be able to win more than 7 games with that team.
Yes, and that's a great idea with the debate of Brady versus Belichick kind of debate. You know what I mean? It's because now we finally realized, everyone was asking about it coming in the year, what is it, Brady or Belichick going on? Well, now we figured out what it was, right? Definitely Brady with him being down in Tampa and obviously the success with Cam. And I kind of agree with you that it was probably the first year for Cam that he was having struggles with it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that has to do with the receivers that they have right there down in New England too. When you think about the last year Tom Brady was there, the receiving staff and everything around there wasn't great for New England. You know what I mean? That's kind of a reason you could see that he was trying to leave down to go to Tampa. You know what I mean? He was leaving to check it around. So that's an important part of it. Now, like I said, going on to it, we don't know what New England wants to do. I still think they should go after Jimmy Garoppolo from San Francisco. And hear me out with this, because he used to be beside Tom Brady at the time of this way. He knows Bill Belichick's offense, and that would be a great fit because he's more of a pocket-ready passer to me than Cam is. Cam is more of a running kind of quarterback, moves around, goes around the pocket, and I believe Jimmy Garoppolo would be a better success there in New England with this way. Now, finally, to wrap it up with Tom Brady, I'm just going to say it's great. You know what I mean? It's great for him. You just won a Super Bowl. You're having some fun, and now you get a contract extension with this way. Now, we talked about Godwin getting franchise tag earlier with Tampa Bay. That's another big key for this offense. And with Rob Gronkowski staying with possibly them, well, we'll see. We don't know for sure without Rob because he's obviously still in free agency right now. So we don't know, obviously. But most likely, I'm assuming Rob's going to stay with Tampa Bay. You know what I mean? So it's probably going to be important for Tampa Bay just to keep that up, man. Just keep it up. Keep doing your best because Tom Brady, I still think he can play up to 47, 48, Kruck. It's just because if you put your mind onto something, you can always do it. That's always what I say. So,
and that's going to do it for today's episode. We'd like to thank you for joining us. Make sure to check us out next week as we will be talking about more topics in the sports world. But until then, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, and we'll see you around.